is chair of the One Health program. And the really exciting thing, I think, about One Health and then looking at us in food systems is, one is that we complement each other very well, but the exciting part of it is this idea of thinking in systems and understanding and working within the complexity and challenges of working in food systems. So with that, we welcome Susan.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Hi guys, it's nice to have a small audience. I like the small groups so you can put faces and people can interact and you can ask me any questions if you like. And I do like microbes, and I'm going to highlight a little bit of infectious diseases in my talk, but it's not just the infectious diseases. I have a lot more handy examples to reach from for there. So hopefully, like you're not like me, I had to go to the dictionary and look at what sustainability is all about. And I was very excited to see that, really supports long-term ecological balance. Looks at what are we doing to the environment and make sure it's not harmful so we can achieve this long-term ecological balance. So this is by Edward Hicks. This is a painting that depicts animals in nature with humans, and humans of different races, everybody cohabitating, living in peace and happily ever after. Really a nightmare from the perspective of infectious disease is probably not very good in here if you look at it. But this guy likes the idea of this peaceful kingdom so much, this utopia for him, that he rendered it in many, many different ways over his lifetime. But, you're like me, you know that it's not really a peaceful kingdom. Because we have, if humans get into the environment, if we domesticate animals, if we make changes. And those anthropomorphic changes that we make are incredibly beneficial, damaging. It changes the system. It changes how everything works. So we know that, but we also know that in the modern world, in the Eastern world, it used to be cold, now is the global North versus the global South, depends on which language you use. Health is really a sort of silo. Ag is here, vet school is here, public health is here, medical schools here, medical education and MDs are here, and you can keep going. And as you go along, everybody is in their own silo trying to grow as tall as they can, but there's very little interconnection in between them. Everybody's fighting and really doing the same things without talking, which is an issue. So as a society, we have an obligation. We need to go beyond these silos if we really want to help for everybody. Okay, so that is critical that we look into that. So now that we know that situation, let's see what society also needs. In the past, the world was divided into the really poor people that live in our agricultural society that, they were really happy living poor. Pastoral lands, that sort of stuff was great. But more and more, those people don't really exist anymore. And really the poor live next to the rich. And in this kind of situation, favelas, this is in Brazil, Sao Paulo, here the favelas, these are the rich people. People that work here, who live here, work here. And they all have TVs, although they live in this kind of situation, they all have radios, they all have cell phones. It's a completely different situation of poverty that it was many, many years ago. So that we need to understand that. We also need to realize that kids don't really know where their food comes from. The only time they see animals, they see them in this type of situation, food animals. They're nicely bathed, washed, in nice clean hay, and it's hard for them to associate that with really where the food comes from. And we have a zero risk tolerance for diseases in this situation. In addition, our pets have become like our kids. Some families spend more money on their pets than they do on their kids' health. And they rather put the pets in front of their kids when it comes to healthcare. So we have doggy daycare. People drive in the morning to leave their dogs in daycare, and then come and get them up in the afternoon. It's incredible how we change our mentality, how we think as a society. On top of that, there's a big percentage of our teenagers that think that becoming a new species, one that feeds on blood, is a good idea. They want to become vampires. It's the coolest thing on earth. It's not very healthy from the perspective of infectious diseases. You're going to get something really nasty. You drink somebody else's blood. I can guarantee you that. But society thinks different. We have to move with the times and realize what their changes are. And you can stop me anytime. So here's what One Health comes around. And the definition, the official definition, is the collaborative effort of multiple disciplines working locally, nationally, and globally to attain optimal health for people, animals, and the environment. Or as I prefer to call it, understanding health issues in the nexus of human, animal, and environmental health. But this is at many different levels, including globally. Actually, the Consortium of Universities for Global Health having this annual meeting this year in San Francisco, in 2016 in San Francisco, and one of the big topics is going to be One Health, and global, because it's the way we approach looking at problems across silos, so the animal, human, and the environment are all talking to each other. I was in that meeting last year, and there was somebody talking about poverty and malnutrition, and how we're going to have to help these people. And in their team, they brought cooks to talk about how to prepare food. But there were no veterinarians or ag specialists on how to improve the nutrition of these people, or how to grow new foods. It's about how to prepare the few things that you have. And these were public health specialists. So when we asked the question, what about raising different breeds of animal? How about better crops? And you have veterinarians to improve the health of those animals. They never thought about it. They were just focusing from their own limited perspective, which was the food and how the food was prepared. So there's a lot of room for us to work in an interdisciplinary manner and work with our colleagues. And one of the issues that we have with our colleagues is that we don't talk the same language. We're talking about the same thing, but we're not saying words the same way. And at that moment, sometimes there is misunderstanding. We read documents and you don't think you're talking about the same thing. What One Health is trying to do is harmonize that language and help people from different disciplines to really work together. And this is not just a U.S. movement, this is happening across the world. So the answer to the societal needs of the 21st century. So we're different. We have to do things in a different way. What worked for us in the past is not working for us anymore. So I'm going to give a little tilt on emerging infectious diseases. So it seems that this study by Jones in 2008 looked at emerging infectious diseases between 1940 and 2004, and there were 335 emerging infectious diseases cases. And those are defined as organisms entering the human population anew, newly evolved strains, maybe more resistant, and increase in incidence of a particular disease, like happened with Lyme disease. When they looked at them in detail, they found that 60% were caused by zoonotic pathogens. Do you know what zoonotic pathogen is? No. Zoonotic pathogen is one that transfers from animals to people. Okay? 72% were of a wildlife origin, and 23% were vector-borne, emerging infectious diseases. To put this into a little bit better context, these are the years, and you can see an increasing trend in every single one of the categories. if you look at which type of bacterial viruses, helminths, fungi, we have an increase. And this little blurb you see here, an infection, is a little anomaly. Because during those years is when HIV really took off, and there was a lot of immunosuppressed people where they had a lot of more infections. So it really is a steady increase if you take into account HIV. And here you can see how many are of zoonotic wildlife. You can see these white little marks in here. Yeah, so it's been increasing. Zoonotic, not from wildlife, it's also there, but not as clearly as increased. In every single category, drug resistance, vector-borne, whatever you look at, we have had an increase of emerging infectious diseases. So that's a fact. So societies, we're going back to how we live. We talked about poor people. This is in India, in this land, but people here have TV. And people have radios, and they have stereos, and they live here in this kind of situation. They work in rich places, in people's houses, and they clean, or they do all many things. But they're exposed to lots of infectious diseases. In the past, farms used to be small. You used to have pigs and ducks and chickens all mixed together, and that was great. If you had an infection or avian influenza, you got from one animal to the other, and you have a transmission, and strain that was making people sick, it will die in that village, and that would be the end of it. Today, our animal production is in this type of scale in the same country. So if you have avian influenza in these pigs, and they can transmit here, what happens with Nipah virus, huge masses of pigs, 1.1 billion pigs got killed, 1 million pigs. I think 1.1 million pigs got killed during the Nipah outbreak within a very few weeks.
And that's different from TED, the porcine, the one that happened in the U.S.?
Yes, Nipah is a zoonotic disease. From bats to pigs to people, killing lots of people. Avian influenza could do the same. That one that you mentioned, which is the coronavirus, the porcine coronavirus, doesn't affect people at all. It came from China. And that's part of the ability that we have to move, and the animals to move from A to B. So we moving all the diseases all around. Not only we create them, we expand them, and then we move them. So this is our society. We are deforesting large chunks of land. We are, and I have a better picture for this, cutting the forest and moving very close, exposing people and domestic animals to infections and viruses and diseases that we have no idea where they are at all. We just move very close, and we hope for the best. Climate change is not something imaginary, it's really happening. So all of these is happening, and what we're doing, in this case here, is a little dog in there. And here is when animals are exposed to, everybody's heard about Ebola, right? Okay, well, this is in the Amazon, no Ebola here, but it's a similar situation. You have new mosquitoes feed the monkeys over there or other animals. You expose these people to new infections and new disease. And this is in Madagascar, and this is nude mountain terrain that used to be forest. So this is the things that we are doing, and this is how we're changing where we live. So wildlife richness is a significant predictor of emerging infectious disease events of wildlife origin, and this is because all the damage and how we're exposing people and animals to potential diseases, okay? Changing the ecological niche. So malaria. Malaria has always been thought a pathogen of people that get transmitted by mosquitoes. Well, malaria now, P. nulci, Plasmodium nulci is considered has a reservoir in monkeys, and people that work in the rice paddies and close to where the monkeys are getting bitten by those mosquitoes, and then they get infected with malaria, which is monkey malaria, really. So, depends on where the people are and where we get close to, we get a spillover of infectious disease. This guy here has smallpox. One of the last few pictures of somebody having the smallpox. Smallpox, as you know, has been eradicated. Now, another factoid. The United States imports 350,000 species of live animals, and these are all legal. There are more than 200 million fish, 49 million amphibians, reptiles, birds, 38,000 mammals per year. This is all data. It's very difficult to find this data. I don't think it's been a summary since 2003. APHIS does all the checks of all the customers. They cannot look at every single one of those imports. So things come through, they look at the animal, it's not dead, and they let it come in. They can't test every single batch of animals to see if they have any disease. Monkeypox. I don't know if you've heard, this is like 4 years ago. Keeping a prairie dog is a craze. People in certain parts of the country in the United States love to keep prairie dogs. Personally, I don't find them very cute. But this family bought a prairie dog. Okay, within a few days, the little girl had lesions like looked like this, and mama had also lesions in her fingers. Alert doctor diagnosed it, and then, with pox, like lesions. Can you imagine the scare in the United States? Suddenly we have people that appear to have pox. Well, the prairie dog ended up having monkeypox. Monkeypox only happens in Africa. How does a prairie dog that's been captured in, Midwest have monkeypox? Well, Gambian rat. The Gambian rat is a pouch rat from Gambia. So here is a tie with this. The same vendor that had this prairie dogs had them created in cages, open cages, in the same place where this ones came in. This guys came in with monkeypox, which transferred the monkeypox to the prairie dogs, to pass the disease to these people. So you can see how easy it is, and I'm not making up the story that things move and travel, and you pass infection from one susceptible group to another. This is happening, and this is out there. But what are we doing to the environment? How are we trashing the environment where these animals come from, and where we're bringing them in here? How many invasive species do we have now? Everywhere. This is part of this whole system. We consume things, we want things in here, but we really don't get the gotchas, the unintended consequences of all of these things, and the ability to have money and to be able to purchase them and ask for them. And there's a lot of animal suffering involved, and how the animals get transported sometimes, and how they get captured. But just a little story on infectious disease. So, what else do we do? Rat on a stick. This is a favorite food. Rats and bats are on top of the list of the origin and the reservoir for many, many infectious diseases. This rats on a stick, normally they're not very well cooked, and a favorite food in many countries. And in some places, the only food that they can eat, and that is available. And they sell it by the side of the road. So, another potential nightmare. Why it's important to us here? Well, global wildlife trade is illegal, but 7 billion and 20 billion annually across the world. This is just in the United States. There are places in New York and some of the big cities where underground you can go and eat imported game like lion and other things. There was a study that recently that checked some of these meat that comes in that is kind of smoked, but it's not cooked completely, it really is smoked. And they detected a bunch of viruses in there. So another potential situation, we are creating a market for something that should not be hunted, but we're eating it. So we're creating a system of demand that only does increase the demand for wildlife and hunting and bringing it into the U.S. As long as there is a need, there's a risk, and there is somebody willing to go and get it. This is gorilla. And these ladies are very happy. Normally they want to get Ebola, in kids. So, go back to how society is like. We have another picture in Sao Paulo, and the favelas here. These are one of the places where normally antimicrobial resistance flourishes. And that's why, because we have a lot of uncontrolled use of antimicrobials. Antimicrobials, they're all diluted. They have been in the black market. People use them, sell them under other name, buy them, trade them. People that have them in their houses, give them to other people. And that's a situation which we can give rise to a lot of antimicrobial resistance selection. Okay, and we have, in addition to MRSA and tuberculosis and TB, there's a lot of resistance in food pathogens. This is Salmonella and Campylobacter, and that is the rise in many of these countries. And you know that many of our food comes from other places in the world. So antimicrobial resistance is a very complex system. This will be a system in the United States where you can actually find antimicrobial resistance, or you can even select for it. From aquaculture to food processing, antimicrobials to companion animals to humans, the whole lot. And it's very complex, and to study it all, you can't just study what happens in companion animals or what happens in people, because then you lose half of the story. It's very complex, and you really have to have a good view of everything, and that's one of the things that our government, with the Obama initiative, is trying to do. Have a more global perspective on antimicrobials and looking at where resistance is emerging and trying to track it down, where it comes from. And I've done research of antimicrobial resistance in cattle and wildlife, in poultry, in companion animals, and in people. But really, I only touched the surface of everything that is going on. Because to have partners in all of the different areas is very difficult. And to be able to do a good study and study comparison with all your variables. So we talk a little bit more about food. In the United States, we changed how we grow food too. It's not just what happens in Indonesia or some other place. So this is a typical farm in California where they grow lettuce. It's not one house has lettuce, another house has spinach, and then you trade them in the market. These huge fields are open and out there, and we have grown accustomed to consume our greens in bags. All the leaves are the same size in each bag, and they're all nice and ready to eat, right? So to do that, you have to pull all this together and then select from those, and then they get distributed all across the nation. So when you have contamination someplace, and you end up with an infection, the spread in the United States that looks like this. From one single farm, you have all of these number of people sick in different states. And in this particular case, this was a salmonella that was associated with cattle in contaminated water. But I would say recently was another one in where pigs were going into the fields at night and contaminated some of the spinach. But when they go harvest and they go put through the process into the batch, the water got contaminated, and then the next batch contaminated, and the next batch contaminated, and it was just as large and as spread as it, but the numbers were so much huge. The numbers of people infected were tremendous. So this is some people put this in the internet: if you eat greens, you die, which is not a very good message. But if this has happened in a little farm,
no, it's inaccurate.
If you have a small farm, a group of people in the village would have gotten sick, and that would have been the end of the outbreak. The way we do things today, it just spreads all over the world. And if you have cucumbers, they go everywhere, that kind of thing. So we are changing everything. We need to think differently of how we're going to bring solutions for all these different problems. And 20% of all the U.S. supply is imported. 70% of all the seafood, and 35% of all the fresh produce. So we think we have very good standards of how to raise this.
Those are old numbers.
Yeah.
It's actually up to 60% of fresh produce this year is imported.
Yeah. Gosh.
Because of the fallowing fields in California. And instead of that being compensated by American growers, we bought more international.
Well, it's hard to speed up process that fast. So,
yeah. But also we have higher standards. I hope. So how other countries raise their food, and how much can we, when we import, test it and control for it. So this is a little graph that shows here the spice imports, okay? And cashew peppers, mustard, sage, celery seeds. And here you can see the contaminants that you find. Rodent feces, human feces, or mammalian feces, okay? And you can see, for example, that sesame seeds have a lot of mammal fecal contamination. And insects, that's okay. Mold, I wouldn't want to have neither of these two, and not in such large amounts in some of these cases. But if you think how these spices are dealt with in these countries, people just barefoot work, sit next to them, and handle them. And how you clean these things. You just sort them, sieve them so they don't have any big chunks, and the rest goes into the container. But as you can see here, that's everyday occurrence. Do you have a question?
No.
So seeds and the spices have been one of the things that have been mostly lately contaminated, like pepper, salami. Salami was thought to be the source of salmonella outbreak. Well, because sourced from pigs carry salmonella in the GI. Wasn't the pigs? Because the pigs came from the estate that have been through farms that have been processed properly. Was the peppercorns that were on the outside of the salami. And lately, if you go to the FDA website and you look at salmonella contents and things that have been retrieved from shelves, most of them are seeds and spices. But that's the income for some of these countries. So this probably is also old, but you can look at, no, actually that's 2014, that's pretty more reasonable. How much we import, and here is all the spices that we talked about. But we've been increasing and will continue to increase. So we're putting our health and the potential for the diseases to come in the United States, and other countries are doing the same, more and more. And we have less and less ways of handling all of these imports. And that's not only for human consumption, but in dogs and cat food also from China. And there was a melamine issue a few years ago. Melamine is a supplement that was used to increase the protein concentration of this food. It's a chemical that stores in the kidney, and it was killing animals left, right, and center. We still have an issue with jerky treats from China in our pets, and we are looking at salmonella and there's salmonella contamination in animals dying from that, but also there is some chemical that we still don't know what it is that is causing renal insufficiency in some of these pets. when they have many of these treats. So the FDA is very much involved, and pretty soon it's going to try to regulate a lot more how cat and dog food is made and where the sources of these food is. So I talked a lot about infectious diseases. I have a good handle on that. But obesity, I feel like it's also an epidemic. It's in the increase in the United States. This is overweight and obese people. Non-obese stays stable, but obese is in the increase. So there's lots of pictures. And I like to show this. This is fat, okay? And it's fat in here and around the heart. It's really difficult to live with that extra going on, but that's not only happening to people, it's happening with our pets. More than 50% of all our pets, cats and dogs, are obese. And the owners look just like that. And it's very difficult to tell, from the veterinarian perspective, to tell an owner that is overweight, that your pet is overweight.
Although I recently read a study that talked about how if you tell owners that it's important for their dog's health to take them for walks, that the owners are more likely to respond to that than to their own admonition to go walk.
Exactly. So that's one of the other good things about the One Health is you can flip it over and you can ask them to do it for the health of the pet. And we are educating our veterinarians not to feel self-conscious, not to talk about the owner ability to walk or exercise, but the advantage for the pet and the owner if they would exercise. That well-being, I feel to it, yeah, it comes from animals to people feeling good about your pet. But we change society, we change how these animals, because we feel like, oh, I'm hungry, you're gonna treat, you're gonna treat too. And it's shortened the lifespan of these animals tremendously, and it's not very good. To the point, even the veterinarians that have been in practice for a long time cannot tell any longer if an animal is, by looking, if the animal is overweight. There's some 5 things that you have to look at in an animal to determine if it's overweight, because so many breeds, you can't just weigh it and determine if it's, so many pounds is good or bad. You have to look at the girth, which bones protrude, several different things. And if they have, now they look at them, but they are overweight, but they don't even notice anymore. And it's a big campaign in trying to re-educate veterinarians. Actually, you need to look at all these different points, and in your chart, if the animal is overweight, you should actually report it, because it's a problem that could have significance in some type of diseases. When we receive animals, because they die unexpectedly when they have disease, they could be overweight, but I've never seen anything in any chart that ever says that's part of the problem. But they compound some of the diseases. 65% of adults in the state of Georgia are obese. Should give us answer the vote of doing things. So, in past generations, this was the ideal family, right? Wife stays home, wears a little apron, cooks, prefers different food, and if everybody's lucky and they have enough money, they can sit in front of the TV. First use of TV. So our society has changed. This is what a modern couple looks like. Jeans, t-shirt, devices everywhere. Everybody is looking and connected with their friends, drinking coffee, nothing cooking in the background, probably call to get some food delivered. Kids are not there because they're in their rooms watching their own devices and their own TV. Vine, Snapchat, Instagram, there are multiple ways of getting connected. Okay, so this is what is happening in this developed world. So if you ask millennials to attach words and feelings to the green movement, they think it's responsible, smart, and cool. The millennials are a group of individuals. They're more linked to the environment. They are more global. they feel more that what are good things, even some abstract concepts of like the green movement. So they're ready for things like One Health. They're ready for sustainability. They're ready for big, complex ideas that not only affect them, their family, and their little village, but they affect the world. Because many of their friends are everywhere else. They don't live just there. And they're very generous. And they're also ready to give money for these things that they think are smart and cool. So, looking at the new generations, if you look at, think about a kid that's going into some of you, maybe here too, you've never seen one of these before. The kids that are going into college right now, they never traveled with a boarding pass like that. Suitcases always had wheels. Sorry. Women always pilot planes. You can watch TV everywhere, anywhere else you want. You don't have to sit in front of that big box or little box. Britney Spears is old. Madonna is ancient. And the genome of an organism, of course, you can sequence any genome. It's not a problem. For them, that's how the solution for everything. So kids these days are very different than they were. And again, they're one of the most connected groups. And they have, I don't know if any of you have teenagers, but I do. And I had about 20 of those in my house this Saturday. Okay, for a big party. They all have the phones in their hands, and they all were sharing the stories with people that were not at the party and videos. And my daughter has friends in Italy, in South America, and everybody was at the party. So this is a different situation. We're not like we used to. Communications, anything we do, any phone call, any pictures, there's taken of you guys everywhere. We need to take advantage of this. We need to use this to communicate across the thousands and with our population. So, UGA. UGA has teaching, research, and outreach. One Health at UGA has the mission of integrated human, animal, and ecosystem health into One Health and really look at how to improve health for Georgia and the world by looking at new emerging disease threats. And this does not include infectious disease, only any type of disease, anything that affects health. And recently we moved from disease to health, psychological health, economic health. You know, we transcend the idea of a disease, but depression could be called a disease myself. So, ownership versus partnership. Some reasons why some of these big ideas don't succeed many times is because people are trying to own them and to be the chief person and the big director. And that's not what we're trying to do. In UGA, One Health at UGA trying to be a partnership, and what we're trying to do is provide leadership, institutional structure, create academic programs and resources for the students and the faculty. That's what we're trying to do. And facilitating disciplinary research, serve as translators in the communication divide, trying to bring people that have similar ideas and talking very different languages together. And we want to be a hub. Really, we want to be a hub for all of these different ideas, all of this energy that are university, the young people, the old people, the people from different perspectives. We want to bring them and synergize them. And this is my idea of a hub. Big ways of going in and going out and how to translate everything. You can use any device. I'm going to try to be oriented. So the hub has to be able to cross all of these. And never ownership, but true partnership with everybody. Why UGA? We have a richness of colleges, subjects. It's amazing. And to be able to succeed doing One Health, we need them all. And we need to work with biology and anthropology just as much as we work with economic policy. because all of them are really important. And we have bunches of initiatives. Some of them cross many of those colleges and institutes, but we have lots of them. So we are trying to work with them to bring synergy where the synergistic areas are, and there are lots of them. So potential outcomes from a One Health approach, there are multiple, and it may be too small to read. Increasing interdisciplinary research, understanding better diseases, increased knowledge of microenvironment. But really, these are all outcomes that have more emphasis on diseases. But what are the potential outcomes for One Health approach for sustainability research? When we think about some of these big systems, how to produce better, we think about people, but how we think, do we think about how to work with the environment? Do we think about economics? I'm sure you guys do. You have an economic group. But how can we find some good outcomes for sustainability? So it would be great if I can get a box or two for the sustainability to put in here, and maybe replace some of the outcomes of a One Health approach. So there's no better time to act than now. We have lots of outbreaks, and this is one of the latest outbreaks with avian influenza. This is a dog that looks like this, now looks like this, thanks to the ministers of our veterinary teaching hospital. But yeah, we need to curtail and to really bring a different approach, trying to understand and move how people think, what are society's change and move into that, and not think about one person, one approach. So this is a Wordle. I probably you already have used it. A friend of mine, Malcolm Bennett from the University of Nottingham, picked several documents about One Health, took the titles off and put them together, and you can see the animal, environmental, human, and approach. And food is one of the big numbers of words. The words that are mentioned the most. And he says that we need to think as human beings are animals sharing an environment. I like that concept, and we should never forget that we need to really make this a new approach. So if we take a big hammer, put together one of the best teams in the world, we can just go and break that with them, right? And so drive it like you stole it. Get the idea. It's catchy. People believe in it. Go for it. And let me know how I can help you. Thank you.